Hi everyone, it's Mike here. Now normally when I sit down to create an art journal page, I usually have an idea or a thought in my mind as to what it is that I want to try and create. I normally have a mental picture or a mental image either of a quote or of a composition that I want to try and create and translate onto a page. Sometimes I sit down when I have no thoughts in my head whatsoever. No sarky comments. But sometimes when you do that, then creativity and life does create for you. So if you allow the creativity and just start to play, then something will normally come out of that random stream of kind of consciousness of creativity. And this page is one of those times. But also, life does sometimes throw you a curveball, as you'll see. So I'm starting out with an 8-inch piece of watercolour cardstock, 300 GSM, and I'm going to cover it with some white gesso from INDIGOBLU. So it's 300 GSM watercolour cardstock, which is £140, and it's cold pressed, so it's a little bit textured, it's not totally smooth. And as you can see, my brush wasn't 100% clean, but that's okay because this is going to get covered up, so I'm not particularly too bothered that the page has been contaminated by that darker paint. And for those of you that have noticed the paintbrush, this is one of the Dina Wakley Media paintbrushes. So now that my gesso has been added and that black splodge has kind of been covered up, it's time to get the page dry before moving on. So I want to start adding colour onto my page by putting some paint through a stencil. So this is the bubble stencil from Dylusions, and I've just grabbed a handful of cosmetic sponges from my sponge drawer in my blue drawers. That's it behind me. And I've also taken out a dark green VIRIDIAN acrylic paint from REEVES. So as I was putting the paint through the stencil, my idea was that I thought that I would create a band of the darker green going to a lighter green in the middle and then going back to a darker green, not necessarily the same Viridian, but another darker green over to the other side of the page, so kind of creating an ombre effect. So for that I then went and grabbed the lime yellow acrylic paint, again from REEVES, and another cosmetic sponge, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the stencil, this time blending it in through the middle. So now that the lime green has been added, it's time to bring out the third colour. So again, I wanted to go a little bit darker. Now, as you notice, I haven't used the heat gun because I wanted this light green acrylic paint from REEVES to blend in with that lime yellow if it was still wet. So it just adds a nice kind of transitional effect between the two colours. So now that I've got my bubbly kind of ombre effect, I'm going to bring the heat gun out and make sure it's nice and dry before moving on. And at this stage I still have no real idea of where I'm going with this page. So as the paint's there sat on my craft mat, I thought, well, rather than waste it, I would just grab some on my fingers and start creating a little bit of texture, a little bit of a paint effect, just using what God gave me, my fingers. And as I've got 3 colours sat there, I may as well do the same thing with the remaining 2. So just having a quick tidy up and a quick clean, and then I'll bring out the heat gun to make sure that everything's nice and dry before moving on to the next step, whatever that may be. So I had some scraps of tissue paper just lying around. I actually found it on the floor beside my desk, so I thought, well, what the heck, I may as well use this in the page as well. So I decided to tear it into fragments, and then I'm going to glue it down onto the page using the matte medium from, or matte collage PAUGE from ALEENES. God, I think my teeth are falling out. So I'm just going to randomly stick these pieces of tissue down, and because they are tissue paper, obviously that the tissue kind of disappears into the background, just leaving that black text effect on the back of the page. It just adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of interest into the background. So I think I've kind of added enough of that tissue paper into the background to add some interest. So I decide that I'm also going to add some stamping in there too. And this is kind of where the technology starts to fail on me. So this is the classic number 5 stamp set from Tim Holtz for Stampers Anonymous. And I grab one of the images, which is an eye image. And I'm going to stick it onto my ROCKERBLOCK from Crafter's Companion. And we're using the jet black archival ink. I'm just going to ink up the stamp and then stamp it around the page. Now, I do one and everything's fine, as you'll see. And then after I finish that first one, I think, yeah, that looks really, really good, so I'm going to do it with the others. And this is where the technology failed. Now, I don't know what happened. The camera just seemed to freeze, and you can see that the picture is actually split towards the bottom, and it's like this for the duration of the stamping. But I did actually press stop and then start recording again, as I normally do, and everything resumes. But in that missing clip, you can see that I have used other stamp sets or stamp pieces from that same set, so you haven't really missed that much. So next I'm going to add a focal point. This is an image that I cut out from a magazine. It was actually from an army recruitment magazine that I picked up in my local supermarket. So just using the matte collage PAUGE from ALEENES, I've already added a coat on the actual page itself, and I'm just going over the top just to seal the image in. Now, I didn't actually realise this until later on, but it was a very, very glossy image. And because I've added the matte collage PAUGE, then it has dulled that image down to a matte finish. So next up, I grabbed my titanium white acrylic paint, and I'm going to use the same bubble stencil that I had done before. I wanted to keep the same kind of imagery that I'd already used, but I wanted to blend the photograph of the soldier into the rest of the page, because I thought he had kind of stark lines around the shape of his head. So to help blend him into the page, I'm using the white and then integrating the white from the edge of the photograph into the background of the paper, of the watercolour cardstock. So it does help to kind of blend him and ground him into the composition. And then to make it look as though it does actually all belong, I've added some more white around the edges of the paper. It's almost kind of looking like army camouflage now. So next up, I decided I want to add some more grounding on the left hand side of the page, but I actually wanted to bring some darker colours in. So I've brought back my jet black archival ink. I'm just adding a blending foam to my blending foam tool. God, that's a mouthful. And then I'm going to grab a stencil. In this case, I'm going to use the CHICKENWIRE reversed stencil from TCW, and I'm going to add some of that stenciling over towards the left hand side of the page. And you will see that I do bring the stenciling into and across his head and into his face, so it does help to ground him even more. Just adding one more piece of stenciling just over to that left hand side of the page, and then I'm happy that the composition balances. So I now need to add a quote or a little phrase, and using the small talk stickers from Tim Holtz, as I'm flicking through, I found the perfect quote to go with the page, and all it reads is, "Let life surprise you." And because I've added black detailing into the background with the stamping and with that stenciling, I'm going to go around the word blocks using the Pigma No. 5 Micron pen. This is a permanent archival quality pen from Sakura. So after sitting back and looking at the page, as I sometimes do halfway through a composition, I realised that I wanted to add a little bit more white over towards the left hand side of the page. So to do that, I've just added a little bit of water to the remaining white paint that was already on my craft mat, and I decided I'm going to add a few white splatters. It's the obligatory splatters on the page, which does help to pull everything together. And of course, with splatters, you do need to make sure that they are completely dry before you do anything else, otherwise you'll end up smudging them. So I'll bring out my heat gun and give it a quick blast. So I'm really liking the way that the page has turned out, even with those technology failures. So I decided that I'm not going to do any more to the page. So all I'm going to do now is to sign and date it, and then I'm going to call this page complete. So just taking one final look, am I happy? Yes. So as you can see, life does sometimes throw you a curveball, does surprise you, even when you least expect it or want it. So that was the page, and that was the technology failure. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share the video with all your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of this video, if technology allows. That's all from me for now. I'll see you all again real soon. Bye for now. I just want to give a huge shout out to all of my angels, because without you, this video would not have been possible. Thank you.